Have you ever felt drained after a conversation, even when nothing was said aloud? Have you walked away from someone feeling smaller, uncertain, or questioning yourself and wondered, why does it always feel like they are testing me? Toxic people have a way of finding the cracks in our armor, the spaces we keep hidden, and they push, probe, and provoke, not to help us grow, but to see how far they can bend us. Today, I want to show you something powerful: how to recognize their tests, protect your energy, and rise stronger every single time. Because once you understand their game, you no longer have to play by their rules. You get to play by yours. You ever notice how some people in your life seem to have an uncanny ability to see right into you, to find the spots you think are hidden? Those areas where you feel fragile, unsure, insecure, the parts of yourself that you don't like to acknowledge, that you tuck away behind smiles, behind polite words, behind what you hope looks like confidence. Toxic people, they don't stumble upon these weaknesses by accident. They are drawn to them. They test you to expose them, to pull them into the light, to see how you will react when the world isn't kind, when someone is intentionally unkind. It starts subtly, almost imperceptibly. Maybe it's a comment during a meeting, something that seems small, almost meaningless at first, but it hits a nerve. Maybe it's about your work, your ideas, your way of doing things. Are you sure that will work? They ask, not with curiosity, but with doubt hidden in every word. They are testing you, probing your confidence, seeing if you will crumble under scrutiny. And often, in that moment, we feel it, a flicker of self-doubt, a question forming in the back of our mind. Am I enough? Am I doing this right? That flicker, that questioning, is exactly what they were hoping for. Toxic people have a talent for finding the points where we are most vulnerable. It could be something as tangible as a skill or a project, but it's often something deeper, something intimate. It could be your self-esteem, your fears, your past traumas, the wounds you've carried for years. They will push, poke, nudge, not necessarily to hurt you physically, but to watch how you respond. Do you react with anger? Do you retreat? Do you begin to question yourself? That response, that reveal, is their prize. But here's the truth: when someone tests you like this, it is not a reflection of your weakness. It is a reflection of their need to find control. It is a reflection of their inability to deal with themselves, their own fears, their own shortcomings. The fact that they are focused on exposing yours is not proof that you are lacking. It is proof that they are attempting to assert dominance, to manipulate reality so that they feel stronger, safer, or more powerful. The problem is theirs, not yours. You might wonder why anyone would do this knowingly. Why would someone invest so much energy in highlighting your flaws? Its simple weakness invites influence. If they can convince you of your own unworthiness, if they can make you second guess yourself enough times, they gain a kind of power over you. Think about it. How many times have you felt hesitation or fear or self-doubt in the presence of someone who seems critical, even subtly so? That hesitation is exactly what they are looking for. It is the opening through which their influence enters, and yet there is a way to outsmart this. The first step is awareness. The moment you realize that the question, the comment, the situation is a test, not just an innocent remark, you create a pause, and in that pause, you reclaim your power. Awareness is not just noticing, it is understanding the intent behind the action. When you understand the mechanics of their behavior, when you recognize that it is a test of your strength rather than an objective assessment of your value, you can choose your response deliberately. You no longer react automatically, no longer allow the impulse of anger or fear to dictate your next move. It helps to think of toxic tests as mirrors rather than attacks. Every comment, every subtle jab, every push against your boundaries reflects something inside of you, not because you are weak, but because it exists. And here is where it becomes profoundly empowering. You get to decide how you see it. You can view it as a flaw that defines you, or you can see it as an opportunity to understand yourself better, to fortify yourself, to step into your own strength. A mirror doesn't define you, it only shows you what is already there, waiting for recognition and resolution. Let me give you a story. There was a man I once knew who worked at a company with a particularly toxic supervisor. This supervisor had a way of calling attention to minor mistakes, exaggerating them in meetings, and subtly undermining confidence. Every week, he would single out this man, questioning his abilities in front of colleagues, questioning his decisions, testing his composure. And for a while, the man felt small, doubted his own judgment, and carried the tension home at night. He began to question whether he had chosen the right career, whether he was capable at all. But one day, something shifted. He realized that this behavior was not about him, it was about the supervisor. He understood that the constant testing was a strategy to make others feel insecure because it temporarily made the supervisor feel strong. That awareness changed everything. He began to respond differently. When criticized, he remained calm, precise, and confident. He double-checked his work, not out of fear, but out of care for his own standards. The supervisor's attempts to provoke him started to fail. And over time, the man's reputation for integrity, resilience, and calm under pressure became recognized, respected, and valued by others in the organization. The very thing meant to weaken him had, instead, strengthened him. And that is the power of understanding this dynamic. Toxic people test you not to help you grow, but growth is often the side effect when you recognize the game and refuse to play on their terms. You learn to see their behavior not as a reflection of your value, but as a reflection of theirs. You learn to protect your energy, to choose your battles, to hold your ground. Every test they throw at you becomes an opportunity to refine your awareness, to strengthen your confidence, and to define yourself on your own terms. It is not easy, of course. When someone tests your weaknesses, it can feel personal. It can feel like an assault on the very fabric of your being. But take a moment and think about the people in your life who have challenged you. Not everyone who challenges you is toxic. Some people test you because they believe in your potential and want to push you to be better. The difference is intention. Toxicity seeks to diminish. Awareness and self-knowledge allow you to see the difference. And when you do, your reaction shifts from defensiveness to clarity. There is also another layer to this. The weaknesses they test are often the areas where you are most sensitive, and sensitivity is not weakness. In fact, it is often a source of incredible strength. The very things that make you vulnerable, your empathy, your dedication, your high standards, are the things that can be weaponized against you by someone toxic. But when you understand this, you can shield yourself without shutting yourself down. You can honor your sensitivity while refusing to let it be exploited. You can be strong without losing your humanity. Data from psychological research supports this approach. Studies in social psychology show that when individuals recognize manipulative intent, they are significantly more likely to maintain self-esteem, resist coercion, and avoid falling into toxic dynamics. Simply put, awareness and understanding change the brain's response to stress, allowing you to act with intention rather than react out of fear or insecurity. You literally become harder to manipulate simply by knowing the game and observing it calmly. And here is something I want you to hold close. Nobody can expose what isn't there. If you have cultivated self-worth, resilience, and clarity, then even when someone tries to test your weaknesses, there is no vulnerability for them to exploit. You might stumble, you might feel the pull, but deep down, you are anchored. Toxic tests lose their power when you are anchored. And being anchored doesn't mean being invulnerable. It means being aware of your foundation and refusing to let external forces shake it. Think of it like this: every test they throw at you is like a wave against a rock. A rock that is solid and aware will withstand the waves. A rock that doesn't understand its own weight will be eroded, chipped, and shaped by the currents. The difference is in knowing your own weight, your own boundaries, your own value. And the beauty of this is that each test, each attempt to expose a weakness is an invitation. It is an invitation to rise, to see yourself more clearly, to respond consciously rather than instinctively. Toxic people don't want you to see that. They don't want you to turn the test into your own triumph. But that is precisely what can happen when you observe without judgment, when you pause before reacting, and when you recognize the pattern for what it is. So, the next time someone tests you, the next time you feel that familiar twinge of doubt or fear, pause. Notice the impulse. Notice the words, the tone, the context. Ask yourself, what is this really about? Is this a reflection of my weakness or a reflection of theirs? In that moment, you reclaim your power. You choose your response. You choose to remain calm, deliberate, and aware. And you begin to transform what was meant to weaken you into an opportunity to know yourself, to fortify your strength, and to continue moving forward with clarity and purpose. Because here is the truth toxic people will always test. It is their nature, but you don't have to fail their tests. You don't have to react. You don't have to bend. You don't have to crumble. You have the ability to recognize, understand, and rise above. Every weakness they attempt to expose becomes a chance to illuminate your own power, to define your boundaries, and to walk through the world with eyes open, unshaken, and resilient. And when you realize this, when you internalize it, you begin to see something extraordinary. What was meant to break you can actually make you stronger. You begin to understand that tests are not punishments, they are invitations to awareness. You begin to see that every interaction, even the difficult ones, can be a mirror reflecting not your limitations, but your capacity to stand tall, to act with intention, and to reclaim your energy and power. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have this way of pushing you, not physically, but deep inside, where it hurts the most? Toxic people have an uncanny talent for finding the limits of your emotional capacity. They're not testing your strength in the traditional sense. They're testing your heart, your patience, your ability to remain centered in the midst of discomfort. They are measuring how much of your emotional energy they can extract before you begin to crack, before your reactions give them the satisfaction of control. It often begins in small, almost invisible ways. A subtle comment about how you handled a situation, a question disguised as concern, a look that carries judgment. You feel it in the pit of your stomach before your mind even registers what happened. That feeling is real, and it is their goal. They want to see if you will absorb their negativity, if you will allow their words or actions to invade your inner space, your emotional sanctuary. They are not testing you to help you grow. They are testing you to see if they can manipulate, unsettle, or destabilize you. And yet, what makes this particularly challenging is that emotions are not like logic. Logic can be analyzed, studied, countered. Emotions are visceral, they are immediate, they are intimate. They bypass the intellect and go straight to the part of you that cares, that loves, that fears. When someone begins to push those buttons, it feels deeply personal, almost as if they have tapped into the very core of who you are. And in a way they have. But not because of your weakness. They have tapped into your humanity, your capacity to feel, to care, to react. That is precisely what makes emotional boundaries so critical. An emotional boundary is not a wall to shut people out. It is a line that defines what is yours and what is theirs, what you will accept and what you will not. Toxic people test these boundaries constantly. They may try to get you into actions you are uncomfortable with, shame you for having needs, or provoke reactions to see if you will lose your composure. The subtleness is what makes it so effective. Often, it's not a shouting match or a dramatic confrontation. It's a quiet, insidious drain of your energy over time. And if you are unaware, you may not even notice it until you feel exhausted, anxious, or diminished. One of the most common ways they test emotional boundaries is through manipulation disguised as intimacy. Consider someone who always calls when they need support, but is never available when you do. Or someone who shares dramatic stories of struggle, demanding your attention and empathy, but never respects your emotional space. At first, you may think you are helping, or that their needs are genuine. But over time, you realize that your energy is being siphoned, your emotions are being pulled into their turbulence, and your boundaries have been tested and crossed repeatedly. The key to outsmarting this dynamic is clarity and awareness. Recognize when someone's words, actions, or presence is attempting to invade your emotional space. It doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. It means you learn to observe without immediate absorption. Take a breath before reacting. Ask yourself, is this mine to carry? Or is this an attempt to unsettle me? That pause, small as it may seem, is revolutionary. It transforms reactive vulnerability into deliberate power. Let me share a story. I knew someone who had a friend that constantly tested their emotional boundaries. This friend would call late at night in moments of crisis, expecting immediate attention, empathy, and solutions. At first, the person responded every time, feeling guilt and obligation. Over months, their energy depleted, their anxiety grew, and their own priorities were sidelined. Then they made a decision. They communicated a clear boundary. I care about you, but I cannot respond to late night calls. I need to protect my rest and focus on my own well-being. At first, there was resistance. The friend tried guilt, pleading, and subtle blame. But over time, the relationship adjusted, and the person discovered something profound. They could care deeply without being consumed. Their energy, their focus, their emotional health remained intact. They had not shut down love or compassion. They had simply drawn the line. Another aspect of emotional testing is subtle provocation. Toxic people often provoke reactions to watch you lose composure, to see your emotional armor crack. They might say something deliberately frustrating, make a comment meant to irritate, or question your intentions in a way that makes you doubt yourself. And when you respond with anger, defensiveness, or hurt, you give them the confirmation they are seeking. That reaction is their reward. But if you can pause, breathe, and respond calmly, or sometimes not respond at all, you strip the test of its power. You remain anchored, unshaken, and aware. Emotional boundaries are not selfish, they are survival. Research in psychology shows that individuals who maintain clear emotional boundaries experience lower stress, higher resilience, and better overall mental health. They are less likely to be manipulated, less likely to burn out, and more able to form authentic relationships. Setting boundaries is not about pushing people away. It is about protecting the integrity of your emotional life so that you can engage fully, consciously, and powerfully with the world. Toxic people often escalate their testing. When they sense resistance, they will push, challenge, and attempt to break through your boundaries repeatedly. But the more consistently you reinforce your limits, the weaker their influence becomes. Imagine a child testing the limits of a parent. The more consistently the parent enforces the rule, calmly and without wavering, the faster the child learns where the line is. Emotional boundaries work in the same way. Consistency is strength, consistency is clarity, and consistency transforms vulnerability into power. It is also important to recognize that emotional testing can happen in professional settings, not just personal relationships. A manager might criticize you unfairly to see if you will overreact. A colleague may gossip or provoke subtle tension to watch how you respond. In these moments, the temptation is to engage, defend, or justify yourself. But often, the most effective strategy is to remain composed, observe the situation, and respond deliberately. Your emotional reaction is yours to manage, not theirs to provoke. The more intentional your response, the more control you reclaim. Self-awareness is the most potent tool in this process. The moment you recognize a pattern of emotional testing, you gain perspective. You can see the tactics, predict the behavior, and decide how much energy to invest. You can distinguish between what is meaningful and what is a provocation meant to destabilize you. And that distinction changes everything. You stop reacting unconsciously. You stop giving away power. You start responding thoughtfully, calmly, and strategically. One powerful strategy is to visualize your emotional boundaries as a personal space. Imagine an invisible shield around you, one that filters what comes in, Toxic people may hurl words, criticism, or provocation, but only what is allowed by you enters. You decide what to absorb and what to let bounce off. This is not fantasy. It is a cognitive technique rooted in mindfulness and self-regulation, proven to reduce stress and emotional reactivity. It allows you to engage without being consumed, to care without being manipulated, and to exist in your own power. And sometimes the ultimate test comes from people who are closest to us. Family members, lifelong friends, partners. They often have the ability to bypass our defenses and reach us in ways others cannot. When these relationships turn toxic, the emotional testing can feel unbearable. But even here, boundaries are critical. You do not have to sever all connection, but you must define what is acceptable and what is not. Protecting your emotional space is not betrayal, it is survival, it is self-respect, and it is love for yourself and the relationship. Think about a moment when you felt drained after an interaction. Chances are that was someone testing your emotional boundary without your awareness. Reflecting on that moment, you can ask, where did I allow my energy to be taken? Where did I give away my peace? What line did I fail to draw? Awareness creates choice. Once you know, you can act differently. You can engage, but not at the expense of your emotional well-being. You can respond, but not surrender. Emotional testing often triggers a fight or flight response, a deep-seated instinct to defend, attack, or escape. But in these moments, awareness transforms instinct into conscious choice. You can choose to step back, to breathe, to center yourself. You can choose to protect your energy rather than expend it. You can choose calm over chaos, and in doing so, you outsmart the very mechanism of their testing. And here is the deeper truth. The strength of your emotional boundaries defines the quality of your life. Every interaction, every relationship, every encounter is influenced by how well you protect and manage your energy. Toxic people will always exist. They are part of the human landscape. But the more attuned you are to your own boundaries, the less their testing can harm you. You begin to move through the world with clarity, intentionality, and resilience. You begin to respond rather than react. You begin to transform the energy they attempt to drain into fuel for your own growth, purpose, and peace. Ultimately, emotional boundaries are not about defense alone. They are about empowerment. They are about taking ownership of your inner world, about deciding who has access to your heart, and about refusing to give away your peace to those who do not respect it. Every time someone attempts to test your emotional limits, you have an opportunity to recognize the intent, to pause, to respond deliberately, and to reclaim your power. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. The tests lose their weight. The provocations lose their sting. The subtle attempts to destabilize you no longer define your day, your mood, or your sense of self. You stand anchored, composed, and aware, and in that stance, you are untouchable. Not because toxic people have disappeared, but because their influence no longer controls you. You have outsmarted the game entirely. Patience and integrity, these are two of the most quietly powerful aspects of who we are. They are not loud or flashy, and they do not demand attention. Yet, when someone chooses to test them, the effects can be immediate, visceral, and profound. Toxic people have an uncanny ability to identify the limits of both. They want to see how much you will tolerate, how much you will bend, how far you will compromise your principles in the name of convenience, avoidance, or fear. They are measuring your boundaries, your strength, and the quiet steel that lies beneath your surface. It often begins subtly. Maybe it's a request for something that feels just beyond your comfort zone. Maybe it's a situation that nudges you to act in a way that contradicts your values. You feel that internal tug and instinctive awareness that says, this isn't right, this doesn't feel true. But the toxic test presses on. They are patient, persistent, and often cloaked in the guise of necessity or urgency. And in those moments, your patience is what will be tried, because they are counting on frustration, irritation, or haste to weaken your resolve. Patience is more than simply waiting. It is maintaining composure in the face of provocation. It is remaining grounded when the world seems intent on shaking you. It is the ability to pause before responding, to consider before acting, and to hold space for integrity even when others around you are abandoning it. Toxic people understand this. They understand that if they can push you into impatience, you might act impulsively, make a mistake, or compromise your values just to end the discomfort. That momentary lapse is the victory they seek. Consider a story from real life. A friend of mine worked under a manager who constantly pressured the team to meet unrealistic deadlines. The manager would demand results, often in ways that contradicted ethical standards, and would test the patience of anyone unwilling to cut corners. Many people reacted with frustration, lashing out, or quietly compromising their integrity just to avoid conflict. But my friend chose a different path. He recognized the pressure for what it was, a test of both patience and principle. Instead of reacting impulsively, he slowed down. He asked questions. He insisted on proper procedures and quality standards, even when it was inconvenient. At first, the resistance he faced was intense, but over time, his patience and integrity became undeniable. He did not just survive the tests, he gained respect, credibility, and the satisfaction of knowing he had remained true to himself. Integrity is often inseparable from patience. It is the quiet compass that guides decisions even when the path is difficult or tempting to compromise. Toxic people will test it relentlessly, often in ways that seem small at first, almost innocuous. A comment that challenges your ethics, a subtle suggestion to cut corners, a scenario that asks you to compromise honesty for expediency. These are the battlegrounds of integrity. What they hope for is a slip, a moment when you rationalize a choice that violates your own moral compass. But every time you recognize this, every time you hold to your values, you reclaim power. One of the hardest aspects of these tests is that they often appeal to fear. Fear of conflict, fear of loss, fear of rejection or failure. Toxic individuals understand human nature. They know that when fear is present, patience falters, and integrity can be compromised. They create situations where your instincts, your impulses, and your desire for security all pull in one direction while your principles pull in another. The tension is uncomfortable, but it is also revealing. It is a moment where your true character emerges. Real-life examples illustrate this clearly. Consider whistleblowers in corporate environments. Time and again, employees are placed in positions where revealing unethical practices could jeopardize their careers, their reputation, or their livelihood. The company, the colleagues, or even society may push back, creating immense pressure. These individuals are tested on patience as they navigate complex, often slow, moving systems, and on integrity as they resist the temptation to stay silent for convenience. What is remarkable is that those who hold their patience and integrity often emerge not only morally intact, but often more respected, more empowered, and more self-assured than they could have imagined. Patience in this context is not passive, it is active endurance. It is the ability to navigate difficulty without losing composure, without allowing the provocation to dictate your actions. When someone tests your patience, it is tempting to act impulsively, to speak harshly, to retaliate, to abandon your own values for immediate relief. But resisting that temptation, holding steady in the face of irritation or provocation, is where true strength is revealed. Another element to consider is that these tests are often repetitive. Toxic individuals rarely test patience and integrity once. They create patterns of pressure and temptation. A single test may be manageable, but repeated tests build stress, fatigue, and sometimes doubt. The challenge is maintaining consistency, the quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to compromise. Even when it is inconvenient, uncomfortable, or misunderstood, consistency is the armor that protects patience and integrity from erosion. Imagine a scenario in your own life. A colleague takes credit for work you've done. You feel anger, frustration, and the impulse to confront aggressively. The toxic test is not the action itself. It is whether you allow impatience to guide your response, whether you compromise your integrity to retaliate or prove a point. A measured response, rooted in calm and ethical behavior, transforms the test into a demonstration of strength. It is in these moments that patience and integrity converge, forming a foundation that cannot be easily shaken. It is also worth noting that these tests often reveal the depth of your self-respect. Patience and integrity are closely tied to how you value yourself. If you do not believe that your principles and composure matter, you are more likely to yield to provocation. But when you recognize your own worth, when you understand that your character is non-negotiable, toxic tests lose their power. The more anchored you are in your self-respect, the less you will be swayed by external pressure or attempts to manipulate your choices. Data from psychology supports the significance of patience and integrity in resisting manipulation. Studies have shown that individuals with high self-control and strong moral frameworks experience lower stress levels, have more stable interpersonal relationships, and are less susceptible to coercion or toxic influence. In other words, patience and integrity are not abstract virtues. They are practical tools for navigating a world filled with challenges, tests, and manipulations. It is also important to recognize that patience and integrity are tested not only in overtly difficult situations but also in subtle, everyday moments. A coworker who repeatedly challenges your decisions, a friend who pressures you to act against your principles, a partner who tries to shift responsibility or blame. These are all arenas where patience and integrity are quietly measured. Each moment is an opportunity to reaffirm who you are, to act deliberately rather than react impulsively, and to demonstrate that your values are non-negotiable. Sometimes, maintaining patience and integrity requires courage. Courage to speak the truth when it is inconvenient. Courage to wait when you are tempted to react. Courage to uphold your principles even when others mock, criticize, or pressure you. The path is rarely easy, the tests are persistent, but the rewards are profound. Strength, self-respect, trustworthiness, and inner peace emerge not from yielding under pressure, but from holding steady. Even when it feels difficult or lonely, there is also a subtle beauty in recognizing that every test of patience and integrity is an opportunity. Every challenge to your composure, every scenario that tempts compromise, every situation that provokes frustration is an invitation to practice mastery over yourself. It is a chance to refine your ability to respond consciously rather than react impulsively. It is a chance to embody the principles you believe in, to show others and yourself what it means to live with honor, clarity, and resilience. Let me share another example. A young professional was working in a fast-paced, high-pressure environment where ethical shortcuts were often suggested as practical solutions. The temptation to take the easy way was immense, and colleagues often mocked the young professional's insistence on honesty. Over time, the stress built, and the tests of patience were relentless. Deadlines were tight, criticism was frequent, and shortcuts seemed like the only way to keep up. Yet, the individual maintained integrity, choosing the difficult but principled path. The patience required to persist, to endure criticism without reaction, and to uphold standards in the face of temptation eventually paid off. The individual became known for reliability, ethical rigor, and composure under pressure, qualities that led to long-term success and respect far beyond immediate gains. What this illustrates is that patience and integrity are not about the absence of difficulty, they are about the conscious decision to endure difficulty without surrendering your values. Toxic people will continue to push, to provoke, to create circumstances designed to test the limits of your character. The strength lies not in avoiding these situations, but in navigating them with calm, clarity, and commitment to your principles. Every interaction, every pressure, every ethical dilemma is a microcosm of life itself. The tests of patience and integrity are, in a sense, mirrors of the challenges that shape character. Those who learn to endure provocation without compromise, who maintain composure under pressure, and who act consistently with their values, cultivate resilience that cannot be easily shaken. The toxic tests are temporary, but the mastery gained through them is permanent. And so, when someone tests your patience, when someone tempts you to compromise your integrity, remember that these moments are not punishments, they are opportunities. Opportunities to observe, to respond deliberately, to act consciously, and to reinforce the principles that define who you are. They are invitations to transform challenge into strength, provocation into composure, and pressure into clarity. The tests are inevitable. Toxic people will always exist. They will always seek to measure patience, to tempt integrity, to provoke reaction. But the ultimate power lies not with them, it lies with you. You have the choice to respond consciously, to hold steady, to maintain your principles, and to act with calm and clarity. Each test becomes not a trap but a proving ground, not a defeat but a demonstration of strength. And in this way, patience and integrity are more than virtues, they are shields, anchors, and weapons. They protect the mind, the heart, and the soul from manipulation. They allow you to navigate the world with calm authority, unshaken by provocation, untethered by fear, and unwavering in the face of temptation. They are the quiet forces that allow a person to walk through life with dignity, respect, and power. Awareness and self-reflection are quiet, subtle powers, yet they are among the most effective defenses against toxicity. Toxic people test these aspects of us more than any others, because they know that when someone lacks awareness, they are easier to manipulate, easier to provoke, and easier to control. When your attention is scattered, your judgments clouded, or your understanding of yourself incomplete, they have a direct path to influence your behavior and your emotions. The testing is rarely dramatic at first. It is often quiet, almost invisible, but insidious. A glance, a word, a gesture, a small comment, it is all a probe. They are measuring your consciousness of the moment, your ability to recognize patterns, and your capacity for honest self-reflection. The first step in recognizing this test is noticing the feeling it creates. Have you ever left an interaction with someone and felt unsettled, uncertain, or second-guessing yourself? That subtle sense of confusion, doubt, or discomfort is often the sign that your awareness is being challenged. Toxic individuals thrive on this space of uncertainty. They hope that you will not pause, that you will act unconsciously, react emotionally, and reveal something you might later regret. But the moment you realize that this discomfort is a signal, that this doubt is an invitation to awareness rather than a judgment of your worth, you begin to reclaim power. Self-reflection is not about self-criticism. It is about honest observation. It is the ability to examine your thoughts, your reactions, and your patterns without judgment, and to understand why you feel what you feel, why you act as you do. Toxic people know that when someone avoids self-reflection, they remain reactive, their decisions impulsive, and their emotions easily swayed. They test your awareness by presenting situations that provoke instinctive responses, by creating scenarios where the natural reaction is fear, anger, defensiveness, or guilt. And they watch closely to see whether you will act without considering the full context, whether you will allow the situation to dictate your response rather than your conscious self. Consider a story from real life. A woman worked in an environment where her manager consistently undermined her confidence with subtle criticisms and microaggressions. Each comment, each small dismissal, seemed insignificant alone, but accumulated over time. At first, she found herself frustrated and confused, wondering if she was overreacting, if she was imagining the slight, or if she simply wasn't capable. Her awareness was being tested. But one day, she decided to pause before reacting. She reflected honestly, what is actually happening here? What is my part in this? What is their intention? Through careful observation and self-reflection, she realized that the manager's behavior was not a reflection of her capabilities, but a pattern of manipulation aimed at undermining others' confidence. That awareness transformed her approach. She no longer reacted impulsively, no longer carried guilt or self-doubt unnecessarily. Instead, she responded with calm clarity and assertiveness. By strengthening her awareness and practicing self-reflection, she outsmarted the test entirely, Toxic tests of awareness often take the form of ambiguity. They create situations that are unclear, scenarios where multiple interpretations are possible, and hope that you will make the wrong assumption or misstep. They might offer incomplete information, deliver messages with hidden motives, or frame circumstances in ways that invite misunderstanding. The challenge is to pause, to observe, and to clarify. Instead of reacting based on impulse or incomplete data, self-reflection allows you to step back, ask questions, and see the situation for what it truly is. This is where the power of conscious awareness comes into play. It allows you to navigate complexity without surrendering to confusion, fear, or manipulation. Emotional reactions often cloud awareness. When a toxic person pushes your buttons, they are attempting to hijack your consciousness. Anger, fear, guilt, or shame can all interfere with your ability to see clearly. The test, then, is whether you can recognize your emotional state and separate it from the situation. The practice of self-reflection provides that clarity. You pause and ask, why am I feeling this? Is this truly about me, or is it a projection, a tactic, or an attempt to provoke a reaction? In that moment, you regain control. You are no longer a pawn in their game. You are an observer, a thinker, and a deliberate actor. Real life examples of this are abundant in leadership. Consider a CEO who faces criticism from stakeholders or employees. The tests are constant. Opinions, rumors, conflicting interests, and provocations challenge awareness daily. A leader without self-reflection may respond reactively, make decisions based on emotion, or allow ego and fear to dictate outcomes. A leader who cultivates awareness and practices self-reflection, pauses, considers motives, evaluates consequences, and responds with clarity. This does not mean passivity or inaction. It means acting with full consciousness, resisting manipulation, and making choices aligned with principles and long-term goals. Another subtle aspect of this test is projection. Toxic individuals often project their own insecurities, guilt, or shortcomings onto others. They may accuse, blame, or criticize in ways that are not grounded in truth, hoping that you will internalize the message and doubt yourself. Awareness and self-reflection allow you to separate their projection from reality. You ask, what is theirs to carry, and what is mine? Am I taking responsibility for something that is not mine? That distinction is crucial because it prevents unnecessary self-doubt and preserves mental clarity. Every projection is a test of your ability to observe without being pulled into their narrative. Mindfulness practices are often helpful in these situations. They cultivate a heightened awareness of your thoughts, your reactions, and your environment. By observing without immediate reaction, you create a space between stimulus and response. Toxic individuals rely on impulsive reactions. They seek to provoke, confuse, and unsettle. Mindfulness, self-reflection, and deliberate observation shrink their influence. You remain anchored, aware, and deliberate. You are no longer unconscious in your interactions. Awareness also extends to recognizing patterns in behavior. Toxic people tend to repeat strategies, and their tests are often predictable once you can observe and reflect honestly. By identifying these patterns, you gain foresight. You anticipate rather than react. You see when an interaction is likely to provoke you and prepare accordingly. That preparation is not paranoia, it is empowerment. You are aware of the terrain and navigate it consciously without falling into traps or being hijacked by manipulation. Self-reflection is not just about understanding others, it is about understanding yourself. It requires courage to admit where you may have contributed to a dynamic, where your own triggers exist, and where your reactions may be influenced by past experiences. Toxic people are keenly aware of these triggers, and part of their testing is seeing if they can exploit them. By practicing self-reflection, you illuminate those vulnerabilities. You examine your impulses without judgment, and you choose how to respond with clarity and integrity. This transforms what could be a moment of weakness into an opportunity for mastery. Consider an everyday scenario. A colleague makes a subtly critical comment during a team meeting. Your first reaction is irritation, a defensive thought, or even a sharp retort. The toxic test is whether you act on impulse. Awareness and self-reflection allow you to pause, ask yourself why you feel this way, and consider whether a response is necessary, constructive, or even desired. You may choose to respond calmly, to clarify the intent, or to let it pass without internalizing it. In doing so, you have turned the test into an exercise in self-mastery, reinforcing awareness and cultivating emotional control. There is also a long-term benefit to consistently passing these tests. When you practice awareness and self-reflection, you begin to recognize not only external manipulation, but also internal patterns that may contribute to repeated struggles. You see how certain situations trigger stress, how old wounds affect present reactions, and how clarity can prevent unnecessary suffering. Toxic individuals become less effective because their attempts to provoke you meet a foundation of self-knowledge, calm observation, and deliberate response. You are not defensive, you are conscious. You are not reactive, you are grounded. Over time, this practice transforms your life. You begin to see toxicity not as a force capable of controlling you, but as a reflection of human behavior that you can navigate consciously. Each test of awareness becomes an opportunity to refine perception, strengthen judgment, and exercise discernment. Every challenge that provokes doubt, confusion, or unease is a call to pause, reflect, and act intentionally. What once drained you now becomes a mirror for growth, clarity, and self-mastery. And in the end, awareness and self-reflection are gifts to yourself. They protect your energy, your clarity, and your integrity. They allow you to navigate complex social landscapes with insight and composure. Toxic people will always seek to test these qualities because they are powerful, but the more you cultivate awareness, the less influence their tests hold. You are able to respond with calm, clarity, and intention. You are able to act from choice rather than impulse. You are able to maintain peace in the midst of chaos and strength in the midst of provocation. Every moment of doubt, confusion, or manipulation is a chance to practice. Every subtle provocation is an invitation to observe. Every pattern, every repeated test, is an opportunity to refine self-knowledge and expand awareness. Toxic individuals may hope to unsettle you, but when you respond consciously, when you pause, reflect, and act deliberately, their influence diminishes. You are anchored in yourself, guided by insight, and empowered by self-reflection. The journey of cultivating awareness and self-reflection is not always easy. It requires attention, patience, and courage. It requires being willing to look honestly at yourself, to acknowledge emotions without judgment, and to examine interactions with clarity. It requires the ability to pause, observe, and act deliberately even when it feels uncomfortable or counterintuitive. But the rewards are profound clarity, composure, resilience, and freedom from manipulation. Ultimately, the tests of awareness and self-reflection are not punishments, they are invitations. Invitations to step out of reactive patterns, to observe clearly, and to engage with the world consciously. Toxic people may attempt to destabilize, confuse, or provoke you, but your response is yours to choose. Each pause, each reflective moment, each deliberate action reinforces your power. You move through life not as a passive participant, but as a conscious agent, aware of yourself, aware of others, and grounded in clarity. Your commitment to yourself is perhaps the most sacred, most personal, and yet most frequently tested aspect of life. Toxic people have an instinct for it. They sense the boundaries of your focus, the depth of your dedication, the moments when you might compromise your vision, your peace, or your well-being. They are not always loud or aggressive. Sometimes they are subtle, appearing as distractions, as pleas, as requests, as criticisms. They test whether you will honor your own path, whether you will defend your time, energy, and purpose, or whether you will yield to their demands and lose sight of yourself. It often begins with a small intrusion. A colleague asks for a favor that pulls you away from your priorities. A friend seeks attention when you need space. A partner or family member pressures you to conform to expectations that are not yours. At first, it seems minor, trivial even. You think, I can handle this, I can make a small compromise. But these small compromises accumulate, one test after another, until suddenly you find that your energy is depleted, your focus is fractured, and your commitment to yourself has been chipped away almost imperceptibly. Toxic people understand this dynamic intuitively. They test your commitment not with force, but with subtlety, with repeated small pressures designed to make you question whether your needs, your goals, and your boundaries truly matter. The question they are silently asking is, will you prioritize yourself, or will you prioritize my comfort, my demands, my chaos? And the answer you give is reflected in your actions, your choices, and your energy. Commitment to yourself is not selfishness. It is not arrogance. It is not neglecting others. It is honoring your own priorities, your own peace, and your own growth. When you maintain this commitment, you create a foundation from which all other relationships and responsibilities can flourish. When you waver, when you sacrifice yourself unnecessarily, you create a fracture, a vulnerability that toxic individuals instinctively recognize and exploit. Consider a story from real life. A young entrepreneur was building a business, dedicating long hours, intense focus, and almost all of their energy to the vision they believed in. Friends and family began to pressure them in small ways, questioning their choices, asking for favors, or demanding attention at times that would disrupt their work. Initially, the entrepreneur acquiesced, thinking it was easier to avoid conflict. Slowly, the energy drained and focus fractured. They realized that by yielding to these small demands, they were compromising their own path. When they recommitted to themselves, set firm boundaries, and prioritized their vision without apology, everything shifted. Their work flourished, and those around them began to respect the clarity of their commitment. The tests had been constant, but the commitment to self became unbreakable. Toxic tests of commitment often exploit guilt. They appeal to empathy, obligation, or fear. You should do this for me. They say, I need your help, or if you loved me, you would. The language is subtle, but the intent is clear. They are testing whether you will allow their needs to override your own. And guilt can be one of the most effective tools for breaking commitment. It makes you question your priorities, doubt your choices, and feel selfish for honoring your own path. The challenge is recognizing guilt when it is manufactured, separating authentic responsibility from manipulation, and maintaining steadfast allegiance to your own values, goals, and peace. Awareness is crucial in these moments. Recognize the pattern. Recognize the subtle pressures that seek to redirect your energy. Recognize the moments when yielding would mean betraying yourself. And then make the deliberate choice to honor your commitments, to prioritize your well-being, and to act in alignment with your purpose. It is in these decisions, repeated consistently, that the power of commitment is forged. Toxic tests also appear as distractions. They know that when you are focused, they must find a way to pull you off course. A friend who complains constantly, a colleague who seeks attention during crucial work, a partner who thrives on drama, each is a subtle challenge to your commitment. The test is not whether you notice them, but whether you allow them to redirect your energy, to fragment your focus, or to compromise the boundaries you have set for yourself. True commitment requires not only clarity about what matters, but also the courage to protect that clarity from intrusion. Real-life examples of this abound. Consider artists, writers, or creators who dedicate their lives to a vision. They face endless tests, friends who ask for favors, family who question their choices, society that imposes its expectations. The most successful among them are not those who avoid life's pressures, but those who navigate them consciously, protecting their time, energy, and focus while still engaging meaningfully with others. Their commitment to themselves becomes a quiet force, a shield against manipulation and distraction, and a compass that guides every decision. Commitment to yourself is also tested in moments of temptation. Toxic people often present opportunities or situations that appeal to fear, desire, or impatience, hoping to make you compromise your principles, priorities, or path. These tests are subtle, a shortcut offered, a compromise suggested, an easy way out presented. They are counting on the natural human desire for relief, approval, or acceptance to pull you away from your own course. And yet, in these moments, the choice is profoundly empowering. To pause, reflect, and reaffirm your commitment is an act of strength, courage, and self-respect. Another subtle element is emotional manipulation. Toxic individuals may attempt to provoke guilt, shame, or insecurity, hoping that these emotions will override your commitment to yourself. They may remind you of past mistakes, suggest indebtedness, or imply that your needs are less important than theirs. Awareness and self-reflection, combined with a clear sense of your own priorities, allow you to recognize these tactics for what they are: tests, not truths. And when you maintain commitment in the face of manipulation, you transform the test into a demonstration of integrity and resilience. Consistency is the key. Commitment is not a single decision. It is a series of decisions repeated over time. Each choice to honor yourself, each refusal to yield unnecessarily, each moment of focus and discipline strengthens the foundation of your commitment. Toxic tests often escalate over time, testing whether your dedication is situational or enduring. When your commitment is consistent, when it is practiced daily, the tests lose their power. You become untouchable not because the challenges disappear, but because your allegiance to yourself is unwavering. Consider a scenario in the professional world. A manager repeatedly pressures an employee to take on extra work beyond capacity, appealing to loyalty, guilt, or fear of repercussion. The test is whether the employee will compromise their own boundaries, health, and priorities. The committed response is not passive defiance, but deliberate action, communicating boundaries, prioritizing essential work, and managing expectations with clarity and respect. The employee honors both professional obligations and personal limits, refusing to sacrifice the self for the convenience of others. Over time, this commitment strengthens credibility, builds trust, and reinforces personal integrity. Your commitment to yourself is also about protecting energy, the most precious resource you have. Toxic people often attempt to drain it, whether through constant demands, negativity, or distraction. They test whether you will allow your energy to be diverted from your purpose. Protecting this energy requires clear boundaries, deliberate choices, and an unwavering sense of what truly matters. Every moment you choose yourself, every time you defend your energy, you reinforce the foundation of commitment that cannot be shaken by manipulation, pressure, or drama. There is also a profound emotional dimension to commitment. It requires courage to prioritize yourself in a world that often demands self-sacrifice. It requires patience to maintain focus when distractions abound. It requires integrity to uphold values and principles even when others question or criticize. The tests are intense precisely because they target these qualities. They are not just about actions, they are about the heart, the mind, and the soul. And every time you meet the test consciously, you expand your capacity for self-respect, clarity, and inner peace. Long-term, commitment to yourself transforms how you navigate life. It becomes the lens through which you make decisions, the anchor that holds you steady, and the compass that guides you through chaos, pressure, and uncertainty. Toxic tests become less threatening because your priorities, your energy, and your focus are protected by a deep, conscious allegiance to yourself. You no longer react out of guilt, fear, or obligation. You respond deliberately, empowered by clarity and grounded in purpose. The ultimate truth is that no one can diminish your commitment unless you allow it. Toxic people may test, provoke, or manipulate, but the depth of your allegiance to yourself is yours alone to define. Each time you honor your priorities, protect your energy, and uphold your principles, you are strengthening an unbreakable foundation. Each time you navigate a test with awareness, patience, and integrity, you are practicing mastery over your life. Each time you choose yourself consciously, you are claiming the freedom to live on your own terms. Your commitment is also contagious. It signals to others how to engage with you, what is acceptable, and what is not. It creates respect, even if initially met with resistance. People notice clarity of purpose, consistency of action, and unwavering allegiance to self. Toxic individuals recognize the power they cannot penetrate, and positive, supportive relationships are drawn to your strength. Commitment to self is not only protective, it is magnetic. Every test of commitment is an invitation. It is a chance to observe how you respond under pressure, to reflect on what truly matters, to assert your boundaries, and to honor your purpose. Every subtle demand, every guilt-inducing request, every distraction or provocation is an opportunity to strengthen the foundation of who you are. It is not easy, but it is transformative. The tests do not end, but the resilience you build becomes permanent. And so, when someone attempts to divert you from your path, when the pressures of expectation, obligation, or manipulation arise, pause, observe, reflect, reaffirm your commitment to yourself. Protect your time, energy, and focus. Uphold your principles. Prioritize your well-being. In doing so, you transform the tests into exercises in strength, clarity, and resilience. You demonstrate not just to others, but to yourself that your life, your priorities, and your peace are sacred and non-negotiable. Every encounter with a toxic person, every test they throw at you, is not a measure of your weakness. It is an opportunity to know yourself more deeply, to define your boundaries, and to claim your power. They will push, provoke, and tempt, but the strength you cultivate, the patience, integrity, awareness, and commitment to yourself cannot be taken. You have the ability to respond with calm, clarity, and confidence. You can transform every challenge into a mirror, reflecting not your limitations, but your strength. Stand firm in your truth, protect your energy, honor your values, and remember this: the world may test you, but it is your choice whether you bend, break, or rise. Rise every single time.